Hi, this is Joe Merschman from Merschman Seeds, and welcome to Cup of Joe, episode number 20. We have our normal panel here today. We got Tommy Johns and Ben Pieper and, well, Turk Rigginator. Turk, last week you weren't here. Where were you?
Well, Joe, I had to go to Florida and go to a meeting, and, I know...
We're freezing up here, and you went to Florida?
Somebody's got to do it, Joe. It explains that tan.
Well, I'm sure it was for a bigger cause.
I think this tan is probably a red face. But no, it was, I went down for actually a Syngenta seed treatment meeting, and happened to have to go to Vero Beach, Florida, but the interesting
that's where their research center is.
Actually, it's in Melbourne.
Melbourne, okay.
Melbourne, Florida, and it's the Vero Beach. I guess it's Vero Beach Research Center, and so
for seed treatments.
For seed treatments, and so it was. I was actually down there looking at Saltro, and that's the new Syngenta replacement, so to speak, or competition for Olivo. I mean, it's going to work on SDS, and it's going to work on soybean cyst as well, as long as maybe some root knot control. But it's new. It's not here yet. It's not registered. And you and I have been to the field and looked at this in the field last fall and seen some very interesting results. We could see differences, and so it was a opportunity to see it now in the research center and all the grow outs from beginning to end. And so that's what we were doing. And so very, very interesting meeting and time down there. But this product is probably going to, I mean, again, don't have registration yet. I think it's scheduled to be here around the 1st of July or sometime third quarter or earliest possible, maybe second quarter, but you know how registrations go, so we'll see if it gets here in time to do us a lot of good for this year. But very, very interesting product. The other product that they were talking about was a product called Viantis, and it is a new Pythium product that also has control on Phytophthora, which is kind of unique because you don't have products that have both activity.
So this is going to be something to compete with metalaxyl that currently carries the load in a lot of cases in the seed treatment industry.
Correct. There's 32 different species of Pythium, and metalaxyl is effective on most of the widely known ones, but again, these other ones are starting to creep in here now. And they talk about how Pythium is getting resistance and you're not having the issue. But it's really not the resistance issue that they're having. It is the new species that are coming out or showing up and causing problems. So this new product has activity on all 32 known at this time, and so
more broad spectrum.
More broad spectrum, and that won't be available in the marketplace until later on. So it won't be for this year at all. Probably first quarter of 2020.
Don't you have a clip on this Saltro product?
I do. I actually took a clip on that, and while I was there, and Alex, can you run that? When we talked and we were going to go to this clip here, this is what I was looking at when I was in the Vero Beach Research Center, and this first slide, or this first picture here, is the untreated check. And when I go to this next slide here, or this next picture, you can see this is the Saltro, and you can look at the difference in the plant growth, both below and above ground. If I go back here, you can kind of see the difference, or I don't know whether we can get them both together or not, maybe a little bit, but you can see there's quite a difference, and there is absolutely no problem with the plant and its tolerance to the chemistry. And in this picture, you can see this is the untreated, no Saltro, no nematodes, and you can see what the difference is. So again, the Saltro is doing a very good job making it look as good or even better than the untreated check. So in this series of slides, a little bit different look, and what we're looking at here is a series of red stakes that are inoculated with both nematodes and the SDS pathogen. And if you go to the next slide, or next picture here, you can see, again, we have the Saltro and what it does for you. And again, no stress on the plant. Roots look fantastic and doing a great job. And we talked about the Vyanta, and what it was do is brand new chemistry that's going to be coming, won't be approved until next year sometime. We're excited to see it when it gets here, to see what it's going to do, because it's going to have to be a better molecule for working on both Pythium and Phytophthora. So as we look at this first slide here, you can see untreated and uninoculated. And so if we go to this next slide, you can see untreated but inoculated. And then in this slide, or in this picture, you can see that we have what the molecule that is yet unnamed or doesn't have its name, but it's going to be called Vyanta. And you can see that these look very, very good. This is inoculated, and this is treated with the new Vyanta product. In this picture, you can see that we have another tray of plants that have been inoculated and have treated with pyroxasulfone, which is a commonly used seed treatment for the treatment of Pythium in the marketplace. I'll move over to the next slide, and again, this is metalaxyl. This shows that this inoculation is not very effective on a tray that has been inoculated and treated with this fungicide. So again, the species that are in here are in this seed treatment is ineffective on the species that are there. I'll move over to the next one, which is Apron XL, a very, very common fungicide in the market, and it looks pretty good. But again, I'll say that it's not as good as what we've seen in the first slide. And this last tray, again, this is a full seed treatment with all the fungicides and insecticides and the new Vyanta product. And so you can see this is the one that definitely shows the best product all along. It looks just as good as the untreated, uninoculated tray. So as you can see, there are a lot of differences, and we're really excited to see how it turns out and for more information. But I think it's something that will be a great benefit for our farmers, and as we move forward here in their control of a sudden death. As everybody knows, Olivo can have a little toxicity, plant toxicity with those cotyledons when they come out of the ground. They'll brown a little bit.
Halo effect.
You do not see that at all with this product.
Well, Turk, this is my 2 cents on it. Almost all the soils out there are saturated this year. I mean, because of all the snow and all the rainfall we had, we are set up for probably one of the biggest seedling disease years what we've seen in a long time, because depending upon how fast these soils dry out and how long it takes, we could be cold and wet, and that is perfect conditions for sudden death to set up for, and also perfect conditions for Pythium. So I guess the take-home message this year is really pay attention to these products, these seed treatments, particularly Bonus Coated Plus with Pearl Coat Plus. We think is the most superior product out there. In fact, we can back that up. But this is going to be the year that's going to sort the men from the boys when it comes to seed treatment. Do you have enough efficacy as far as rates and enough overlap to cover all the different diseases that are out there? And this could make a big difference, because we're going to be cold, wet, setting us up for major stand failures.
You can bet on that this cold and wet thing is the real deal. You need to prepare for it. You need to plan for it. And the seed treatment is an absolute, not just a seed treatment, but the best seed treatment that you can buy.
And see, last year, May, if everybody remembers, there was only one day that had below normal temperatures in May, and that was May 1. The rest of May was above normal temperatures. That's why we didn't see a lot of sudden death.
Yep.
So what happens if we have the opposite this year? We will have sudden death and Pythium growing out of our ears, literally.
High potential.
Joe, can you remind us how sudden death takes effect?
Well, sudden death is a disease that affects infects the soybean as it's coming out of the ground, kind of in the crook stage. That's why seed treatments work. Normally, that disease would not show up until it shows up physically in August, usually, or late July. Ben, do you have anything to add on that as far as sudden death from the standpoint of agronomics?
The sudden death, the leaf damage shows up when the plant starts to develop pod set and pod fill, essentially, because that's when the most amount of water is being taken by the plant. And basically that fungus of sudden death infects the plant root, and it colonizes over the year, and it creates a bunch of toxins. And when that plant actually starts to take up, I mean, the plant's water uptake is an exponential curve, and once it hits that point when it's got to take up a lot of water to get all the nutrients in for your
developing your soybeans in your pods,
it pulls all the toxins in and starts to defoliate the plant. And that's why sudden death is one of the, I mean, it is sudden death. It kills the plant before it has the ability to put any weight in the pods.
And I've always understood that there's actually two phases of sudden death. There's the root phase, which has no above ground visual effects, and then obviously the leaf effect, where where you see the green veins, and then the tissue in between is yellow. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that all has to do with the amount of available water that's in the soil at that time, or how hot it is, how much that plant's respirating off. Because you can have the root symptoms are always going to be there if you have sudden death in your field, but if you don't have an abundant amount of water or ideal growing conditions, that plant isn't going to take up as much water as it can. That's why we haven't seen sudden death in the past 2 years now. 2 years we've been pretty sudden death free. It's because we've had fairly dry falls up until, it was harvest time before we got water this year. But for the majority of the plant's reproductive time frame, there has been no excessive moisture. So,
well, and the key thing is that infection occurs at emergence as the soybean's coming out of the field, that first few days of that soybean's life, and that's why the seed treatment is effective and basically prevents that infection from occurring.
Hey, Joe, in a year that you're kind of talking about, if we have the possibility of next year being cold and wet, what do you think kind of an advantage of our biostimulant Tripidity is going to play in that?
Well, Tripidity is going to be huge potentially this year, because basically, it's made up of plant hormones, plant extracts, and nutrients. And the nutrients are all of this is packed around the seed, and basically the seed doesn't have to wait to manufacture these or obtain these out of the soil. It's right there. So what you end up getting is a more uniform growth, and actually the uniformity is the key to first step. And I always said, two most important times in a soybean's life is emergence, and number two is rain during pod fill. And what happens in between, for the most part, doesn't have a lot of impact. You can have a lot of funny things go on, but at the end of the day, those are the two critical things. So the biostimulants that we put on our seed, they're not bacteria, they're not biological, they're not alive, they're actually chemicals. And the whole idea behind it is to give that plant the uniformity. And I've always used this expression, it's kind of like you're going to a buffet and you're really, really, really hungry, and you have to wait for the waitress to say, okay, here, you can go ahead and go. And then when you get to the buffet, you got to wait in line, and you're really, really hungry. The bottom line is, with all these products through Tripidity packed around the seed, it's like sitting at the buffet and having everything in arm's length. Speeds up the process. So that's what Tripidity does. It speeds up the germination process and the uniformity.
It brings it all right to you.
It brings it all right to you, and that's a key difference in our seed treatments, and it is a very, very expensive product to put on. And I think a lot of folks, that when they're out there comparing seed treatments, they say, well, I'm getting an insecticide, fungicide, which is great, that you need that. But then Tripidity is the biostimulant is the missing component that sets us into a totally different league. And I know some other companies have biostimulants, but they have one. We actually have a combination of products. It's not just the plant hormones and the extracts and the nutrients, but it's the right combination to magnify and unify the emergence.
So with every bonus coated plus soybeans, Tripidity is included in that.
That's correct. And your Tripidity in our bonus coated plus is going to help you on your best ground, highest yielding soils, and good fertility, and everything where you got everything go for maximum yield. That's where you're going to see the big difference with Tripidity.
Awesome.
those three components that you talk about in Tripidity also is what sets it apart and what makes it unique from the other biostimulants that are out there. It's that combination that makes it work as well as it does.
Right, and there's only one place that you can get it, and and that's from Mershman Seeds as standard. It's not extra. We include it in our seed treatment package, and like I said, it is the deciding factor and could be very, very important. The more stress you have, the more Tripidity helps the soybean get out of the ground, and that's the key. If you don't have a lot of stress, you don't have a lot of disease. Obviously, seed treatments are not going to have a tremendous effect on the yield at the end of the year because you have perfect conditions. But I don't ever remember having perfect conditions. If it does, it's maybe for a day or two.
No other seed companies put this on as a standard.
I'm not aware of anybody, and we've been doing it for the last few years, and we think it's a game changer when it comes to it. So, be careful. And ask a lot of questions. If you're not using the Mershman Bonus Coated Plus seed treatment, make sure you ask the questions. What are you actually getting, and what are the rates? Because a robust rate, we'll give you about 25 days of protection, 25 days.
Of underground protection.
Underground protection. In other words, if you get that cold wet, that seed's not going to rot. And of course, you can get lower cost seed treatments, but they typically don't. They can lower the rates. You don't get as long a protection. So obviously some years that's adequate, but in a tough year, it's not going to be adequate. So anyhow, anything else, Turk, to add about your Florida experience?
It was nice weather.
Yeah, well, it was colder than heck up here, but we're glad that you took one for the team.
Yeah, somebody had to do it, Joe. So,
but we appreciate it. That's really interesting that Syngenta's got 2 new products coming that are on our radar, and obviously, we'll have to keep an eye on them, and once these registrations come through, we'll surely report back to our listeners.
Yep.
Well, thank you.
That's good information.
Ben, I know you've been working on a couple things. I know this glyphosate issue, what you can apply on top of LibertyLink GT27s and Enlist E3. There's been some questions, and it's kind of more like a soap opera than anything else. It seems like a different chapter every week, a little bit more drama here and there. But tell us what you know as of today.
Well, just like any other time that you deal with the federal government, things take time, and we're still in the ongoing saga of what we're going to do. A very reliable source of ours that we use a lot in the weed management portfolio of our friends that we have gave us a list. He went through over 100 glyphosate labels, and we have 24 products that we can spray over the top if you wanted to follow the label to the T today based on what we think the EPA's
and just to reiterate,
game is.
Yeah, those are maybe didn't catch last week's episode. What we're referring to is that the language on some of the glyphosate labels reference Roundup Ready soybeans. And some folks are interpreting that unless it's Roundup Ready soybeans, you cannot use that glyphosate over top of these new traits, which is LibertyLink GT27 and Enlist E3, because it doesn't say glyphosate; it says Roundup Ready.
Yep, you are correct. It's all over a stipulation, essentially.
A word.
It's all over one word. So even in the article that we mentioned last week, they believe in the article it states that. They believe that, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially the EPA will change the language, and Roundup Ready will be, glyphosate and Roundup Ready will be interchangeable terms. So this is just a list that if you're worried about it and you want to follow everything to the T, things could change tomorrow and the EPA could say, hey, you can spray any glyphosate on any glyphosate tolerant crop, but we went to the due diligence to get our customers a list of 24 products that will be on our website so that they can follow through with.
Alex, he's our videographer. Can you post that, Alex? Okay, yeah, he says we can, so we'll post it on there. And Turk, you dug up some information. You picked up some information too.
Well, we have, Joe, and we were able to find one of the original abstracts that was used in the submission to get the registration for Roundup One, and in that abstract submission, it actually says that uses the term glyphosate tolerant soybeans, GTS, also referred to as Roundup Ready soybeans. So in Monsanto's original submissions, it refers to one and the same. Doesn't say that it is the Roundup Ready only. It says glyphosate tolerant soybeans, also referred to as Roundup Ready soybeans. So they're not, they're calling the same thing.
They're equating
Sure,
it by saying
so,
also
yeah,
referred to as.
Obviously, we're not experts on this. At the end of the day, it's the EPA's decision, but we'll post that too, and so folks can at least look at what we're looking at. And this is, this is like I say, a little bit of a soap opera. We'll get through it, and but we don't think it's going to hinder farmers in any way and able to do this application. But it's a technical world today, and that's fine. But we'll give you all the information that we have. Anything else, Ben, for us?
Nope, that should be it.
More to come next week, right?
More to come next week. It's
As the
never
world
changing.
turns.
Yeah, we'll just keep updating that. Well, Tommy, you as one of our sales managers, you are in contact with our salesmen in the field across a couple states. Mm-hmm. And what are you getting calls about?
A few things, Joe. Number one would be Enlist E3 soybeans. There is a lot of growers out there, it seems to me and some of our sales managers out in the field with the several phone calls that they've gotten, is some of these guys have waited thinking that Enlist E3 beans would be approved this year. So getting a lot of calls if we have supply, and which we do. We have very good supply right now, especially for option acres and commercial use. But again, getting a lot of phone calls about Enlist E3 soybeans from a lot of those customers that have been waiting to hoping to get approval for their weed resistance and weed control problems that they may be having on their farms. So
just for those that are not quite sure what Enlist E3 soybeans, what kind of resistances does Enlist E3 soybeans carry?
So it's got the 2,4-D choline technology within it, as well as glyphosate and glufosinate, which is commonly referred to as glyphosate would be Roundup and glufosinate would be Liberty, or even on the generic name from UPL, Interline. So it's a three-way stack between the 2,4-D choline technology and glyphosate and glufosinate.
Tommy, looking at our products that we're going to release in 2020, we actually have one new Enlist E3 soybean that is, well, we have actually several Enlist E3 soybeans that are stacked with STS, but this one I'm talking about, it also has very good metribuzin tolerance. So you might say we're bringing the first 5-way stack to the market.
Wow. Well, that's good. I'm sure we'll get a lot of phone calls on that one, too.
That one there is in Group 4, so
Okay.
Our southern friends will get the benefit of it.
Well, and then it's also interesting is that there's a lot of supply of, or a lot of concerns about LLGT27 soybeans as far as, I think everybody thought they had a large pile to sell at the beginning of the year and maybe miss inventory management issues. I don't know, but for some reason there's a lot of customers that aren't getting their supply or their delivery made of LLGT27.
Not from Mershman Seed.
Not from us, absolutely
from other
not.
companies.
We did it really well as far as managing our inventory, of setting allocations and expectations, and we've done very well. And a lot of new businesses come in because of that, Joe.
So you're saying our competitors are a little bit lagging behind on showing up with the beans?
No, I just think bait and switch has just been a part of the things, the way people kind of do business, and our inventory management that we've made a commitment on in past years as far as bringing that up to snuff and doing it right, and I think that's finally paying off for us.
Our philosophy has always been that a deal's a deal,
Sure.
and your word is your bond, and so if you commit to delivering a product, you should deliver it. Now, the only curveball that we ever have is if we retest a bin and it falls apart, obviously we're not going to condition that bin and ship it. So we've had two varieties that we've had to say, hey, we're not going to be able to deliver a few of these bags, but otherwise on LibertyLink GT27s we've been spot on.
Very much so.
We did not oversell our inventory. We sold what we knew. We made sure our germs were good before we shipped it, and so I don't think we're calling anybody up and saying, hey, you're not going to get your LibertyLink GT27s for the most part.
I am. And I will say my third point is, spring is going to be right around the corner. And make sure if you don't have your soybeans in yet, and if you're going to get your orders canceled from anybody else, we have a good supply. But for our current customers now, make sure you get if it's not delivered yet, make sure you get that scheduled as soon as possible and get it delivered, because with all the snow melt going on, Joe, and we got freezing just turns into mud, and we've had a lot of flooding issues, snow melt take place, especially with the system that took place the last couple of days here. A lot of concerned farmers out there, and we just want to make sure our guys are taken care of.
I know when you get up in the morning and it's freezing, you think, gosh, planting's a long way away, but it really isn't. And I would agree with you. If again, all of us, for some reason, have short memories. If you remember last April, it was not enough trucks, not enough hours. People waited to the last minute. I know that we typically have to ship out 65% more in April than we do any other month, and it's going to put the logistics crunch on getting trucks. You know, as I talk to chemical distributors, there's not enough trucks, not enough people, not enough hours. So the wise to the smart farmer who's wise will make sure he gets the seed where he can see it.
Absolutely. And remember, I've seen a couple dead skunks already. So
it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, Turk, you got a pontoon, don't you? You can start delivering seed with your pontoon.
I do have, but I don't think there's many farmers right on the reservoir where my pontoon is. So,
well, a lot of things going on in the seed industry, and you know, right now I'm spending most of my time finalizing our 2020 plans, and we're working very hard to get ready for 2020, and we're trying to finish up 2019, which is hard to believe that we get to start this whole process over here in just a few months. But I have never been more excited about what we have right now and what we're going to have, and we hope that you as listeners take a good look at Mershman Seeds and what we have to offer with Enlist E3 now with full approval. And of course, LibertyLink GT27, that's obviously LibertyLink, glyphosate, also interline. We'll go over the top of it, as well as glyphosate, you know, the Roundup portion, and then of course the GT20 or the 27 portion, which is the Elite 27 herbicide, which we don't have EPA approval on, which is the balance piece, is what it was referred to as before. So
isoxaflutol.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to that. And I think farmers should know that they have a lot of choice and a lot of options with Mershman Seeds. So without any further ado, we'll wrap this episode up. And we thank all of our folks that watch and listen, and appreciate your business very much. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, I got to go find some suntan lotion.